So you've met someone that is really special to you and you are wondering, God, is this person the one? Is this person the one that you want me to spend the rest of my life with? And the emotions are high and the imagination is going, but you really want to know what God's will is for you in this relationship. Well, in this video, I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to share with you how my husband and I navigated that big question when we first met and started dating. And number two is I'm going to give you a couple of nuggets that you can stack on top of what I share with you and the experience of discerning God's will for you in this relationship. So when my husband and I met, we met at a Christian conference that neither of us had planned to go to. My mother was working as a nurse at the time and she had the ticket to this conference, but she got called into work at the last minute. And so she handed a ticket to me and said, Julie, you go in my place. For my husband, he had no intention of going to this conference either, but his youth pastor generously bought him a ticket, handed it to him and told him, you're coming with us. And so my husband went to this conference. Now, we hadn't met before, okay, just to make that very clear. But what was common between us both at that point in time was we had only very recently, maybe in the 6 months or so prior to that, we had given our life to Christ in our own journey. And if you want to hear the testimony that I have of how God showed up in my life after a season of getting really involved in like seances and tarot card readings and all that sphere, then click the link below for that particular video. But back to here and what we're talking about today. So there we are at this conference, and my husband is just so in love with God. He's just saying, God, it's just you and me. It's just you and me. He had no intention of even looking for someone special in his life, and neither did I. So he's saying this, God, it's just you and me. And then at some point he hears this laugh, and he's sitting right up at the back row of this conference. He hears this laugh and he starts sort of trying to peer over the crowd to see where the laugh is coming from. And it happened to be me, and he caught sort of just the side profile of my face. But anyway, he just thought, that's a cute laugh. On the third and final day of the conference, the chairs are getting stacked, people are leaving, people are saying goodbye, and the father of the family that I traveled to the conference with, I was walking with him down the aisle, and suddenly he veered left and went over to a group of people talking, and they sort of stepped aside to make room for us, and he looked at my future husband and said, hello, my name's Arthur. My husband introduced himself to Arthur. And then Arthur stepped aside and said, and this is Julie. So my future husband and I got talking and discovered we both were involved at the time in youth ministry. So we exchanged phone numbers. Little did I know that that day he went home and told his father, Dad, I just met the woman I'm going to marry. And his father probably had a bit of a chuckle. And then my husband, future husband, thought to himself, I better just pray a prayer on this. And so he said, God, if she is the one for me, I want her to call me at 5 o'clock tomorrow, by 5 o'clock tomorrow. And I rang at exactly 1 minute to 5 p.m. the next day. So he invites me to Bible study on the Wednesday night with the youth group. He invites me the Friday night to youth ministry. He invites me on the Saturday. So this is just 1 week after we've met. He invites me to a concert. And at that concert, he said to me, look, Julie, I want you to be really clear that when I meet a girl, I'm really only interested in being friends. And I, in my outside voice, said, yeah, sure, totally get it. And my inside voice, I thought, oh, damn it. But then he took me by the hand, looked me in the eye and said, until I met you. I know, heart melt moment, right? And what was amazing was at one point in the concert, so I don't know if you remember this artist, Christian artist, his name was Carmen. So it was one of his concerts. And at one point he stops the concert, excuse me, and he gets people to pray for each other. And this man standing behind us puts his hands on us both and just speaks blessing over us. So on we go in our getting to know each other. And here's one hot tip. Be really clear about what your vision actually is. Because my future husband said to me, listen, I'm not looking just for a girlfriend and all that sort of thing. I am looking long term here. I'm looking serious commitment, marriage. And I was at a point in my life where that's what I was also looking for. So he made that very clear to me right at the very beginning. Now, we dated, fell in love, madly in love, and but we were also aware that, you know what, our emotions are not very reliable because we were in love and infatuated with each other and excited about the future and all that sort of thing. So here's what we did. We asked his pastor to pray for us, to seek God's will. And we agreed that if the pastor, in hearing God, not the pastor, if God said, it's not my will, we would end the relationship immediately, because that is how seriously we took following God's path for our lives. The rest, as they say, is history, because the pastor discerned that it was indeed God's will. And so we got engaged 2 months after we met and got married 6 months after that. And this all happened 34 years ago. Now, one could say with all of that pointing clearly about God's will, before I go further, there was one other, or a couple of other neat things, but one thing that my husband said in his prayer and seeking God's will, he said, God, I want it to be like pennies falling from heaven, just so clear that this is your will. He stops praying, turns on the TV, and this advertisement comes on that says, like pennies falling from heaven, you will know. So he thought that was really interesting and got his attention. Now, one could say with such a clear and obvious indicator of, yes, it was God's will, it would be smooth sailing, right? Well, it hasn't been smooth sailing. 33 years of marriage, we've had our roller coasters of highs and we've had our roller coasters of deep, deep lows. But our faith is what has kept us, our compass, our true north. And so I would put to you, in addition to seeking God's will and just looking for the signs, right? Hearing God's voice for yourself and being willing to create a small community around you of people you implicitly trust that hear God's voice to pray for you, to discern God's will. Definitely do that. And have that compass, that true north of what your values are, what your boundaries are, and also the values and the boundaries of the person that you are thinking you want to spend the rest of your life with, because those boundaries and those values, along with your faith and your shared faith, become a really valuable tool when it comes to decision making, when it comes to navigating challenges. For example, I remember early in our marriage, I had a habit of slamming doors, slamming cupboards when I was upset about something. And my husband drew the line and said, I don't want to live in a house where there's that sort of expression of tension. We talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. So that's just one example of how he set that boundary very early in our marriage. Now, doesn't mean that with a boundary set, everything is smooth sailing. We make mistakes. We're human, right? Things get on top of us, all that sort of thing. But boundaries and values are better than having none at all. They will keep you coming back to that central point, coming back together. So to recap, look for signs, unique ways that God speaks to you, whether it's through dreams, whether it's through circumstances, and notice those. Obviously, His Word as well, but that community around you, that small cohort of people that you trust, people that you know discerns God's voice, bring it to the table and lay it before the Lord in that regard and have them pray God's will to discern it with you. And then the final point is just around the yourself and the person that you're involved with. Have that conversation about values, about boundaries, and the type of values and boundaries you want to build together going forward. So I hope this really encourages you. Let me know in the comments below what your story's been in terms of how you discerned God's will in a relationship. And look, maybe it's been God has said, no, this isn't the one for you. Far better to know God's will and know God's path, because He always has something far greater and far richer planned for you. His no in a season is because there is a greater yes in the future. So just hold on to that too. But let me know in the comments below what has been your God markers, your indicators along the way. And if you know of someone who would really benefit from this, let them know, share it as well, and hit that like button too. And I'll see you soon.